Technically, I am permanently disabled, and that happened when I was 38 as a result of a drastic invasive surgical treatment for Meniere's disease. Meniere's disease is autoimmune or inflammatory. It's idiopathic, so just means that doctors don't know why it happens. They don't know what causes it. I did try all of the treatments and ended up being treatment resistant until I had my inner ear just basically drilled out, like similar to like a dental procedure. And this was after having outpatient surgery, injections into my ear. Nothing ever worked. In 2014, I was at my lowest point. I could not get out of the cycle of heightened anxiety that I was going to have, dizziness, debilitating, and just be in bed, being depressed because all I could do was sleep it off. I couldn't take care of my kids. I couldn't take care of my family. I couldn't work. I was unreliable at my job. I had to, I started intermittent family medical leave of self-worth, anxiety and depression. And I just was like, I can't live this way. I did some research on the internet and I found an otolaryngologist is, like a really special specialist that does inner ear surgery. We worked together and I had to undergo a lot more testing and a couple more treatment options. And then finally in April of 2014, I underwent surgery. I could not hear very well in that ear, but the other part of that is when they drill out your inner ear, there's a vestibular system, which is like a balance system on both sides of your body. And so this is gone. People really wouldn't be able to tell that I have any kind of trouble with balance. I don't have trouble, walking. I don't stumble or anything like that. But technically I am disabled, which is weird, So I don't think of myself that way for a couple reasons. First of all, nobody in my family or my friends would be like, they'd be like, get whatever, who cares? Most of the time I forget that I have hearing loss I can read lips pretty well. I do struggle if I'm in an environment with a lot of people, a large crowd. Obviously, it's difficult to be able to zone in on someone that's talking, especially if, they're not right in front of me and I can't see their face. You can imagine what being out in public, it made me very socially anxious when, people had to wear masks during 2020 and into 2021 because I couldn't see. Everyone experienced that. I couldn't see anybody's facial expressions, so I could not hear them and I could not interpret what they were saying because I couldn't see their faces. I'm sure you had that experience too, some, but it made me very anxious. And those plastic barriers, I would find myself like at the grocery store because it was just like this big. I'd be like trying to look over, the people are like, don't get so close to me. And I'm like, I'm trying to hear you. It was a disaster. Nobody in my family would or my close, friend group, they'd be like, get over yourself. Nobody thinks of you as disabled. And I don't think of myself as disabled either. The other thing is, I was raised in the 80s. It was very much a suck it up buttercup kind of thing. My mom was a nurse, like at a hospital, and for her whole entire career, and she worked with kids. And so all children of nurses, but I had to be really, really sick to, get on her radar. And my mom is a cool cucumber when it comes to that kind of thing. She was really good at her job. She saw very sick children, so she didn't get worked up when I was being dramatic. Raised in the 80s with, my mom being a nurse, I just don't relate to that label of disabled. It's just a technicality. One of the things I really think would have helped improve my health is when I presented with Meniere's disease. I was 23. That's very young to present with that inner ear disease. I have all these weird health things happen. They're all based in autoimmunity or inflammation. Dr. Baker did tell me that it's common if you have one autoimmune illness to go on and develop more. So I developed 4 more from my first diagnosis at 23 until I was 47. And it wasn't all of a sudden, it was all at once. It's much easier to look back and think, oh, well, I could have done this and it would have helped, or I should have done this. But that's just not the way it worked out. what would have helped me tremendously if I had taken a really hard look at my metabolic health. I'm pretty sure I had insulin resistance from the time I was in my 20s, early 20s. I can tell when I look back at pictures that I had inflammation, and like I said, I'm sure it was based in insulin resistance. I had dealt with like emotional eating when I was young, and I wasn't overweight. I didn't have trouble really managing my weight and having a weight gain until after I had kids and I was in my 30s. I really started having trouble with that. But if somebody had told me, or if I had thought to, well, when I was 23, it was 1998. So like there was barely an internet. There wasn't an internet. It wasn't woven together the way it is now. Interwebs just is what it is, and now I know better, so I do better. That's really important. That's what I've been working through emotionally in the last few months. Now that I know better, I do better, and I can teach my kids better, and I can teach my family better, and I can be the example. Because me harping on someone like in my family, oh, eat your protein, fat, eating fat doesn't make you fat. I can say that to someone every day, all day, every day. But being the example, and when someone says, hey, do you have any suggestions, then I can say, well, this is what worked for me. What worked for me is the carnivore diet. In January of 2023, I had a reaction to something I ate, and that sent me looking and researching on the internet, because I just was determined not to repeat and go through debilitating health issues again. I could not get my mind. I was just determined not to. And I was so discouraged, and I felt defeated because, like I said, I had been a part of the health care industry for years, and it chews you up and spits you out. The best way to beat the system is to stay out of the system. And it's just the whole way that it's set up. It's flawed. So I just started doing some research immediately, finding out what I could do to detox or an elimination diet. And I immediately, and I'm so thankful and I'm so grateful, and I would like to shake her hand and give her a hug. I found Michaela Peterson and her story and what she had been through as someone with severe, debilitating autoimmune illness. And by that time, my thyroid was gone, so I had Meniere's at 23, lived with that for 16 years. Then at 30, developed Graves' disease, which is autoimmune hyperthyroid issue. And I took a treatment that killed my thyroid. So my thyroid doesn't function at all. And that happened when I was 30. So I have to replace my thyroid hormone for the rest of my life. That is a long time. 30 is young to have something that will affect you for the entirety of the rest of your life. Then I developed rosacea, that's nothing when it comes to what the other things that I was dealing with. And then 5 years ago in 2019, I developed another symptom of insulin resistance, inflammation of the eye. It's called uveitis. And I was given a battery of tests, and they all came back negative for autoimmune illness, or other types of autoimmune illnesses like Lyme and lupus and inflammatory conditions. And we never figured out the root cause. But at the time, I was pre-diabetic. I checked my chart, and I was pre-diabetic. And I was also 50 pounds overweight. And no one said anything to me. No doctor, and I was seeing specialists every few days because my eye was so inflamed. Once I found Michaela Peterson, I just went down that rabbit hole, and I did all of the research I could. And I thought, well, I'll do Lion Diet for 2 weeks. And I did. It was not the easiest thing I've ever done. It's not the hardest thing I've ever done either. And I was feeling better, and I noticed immediately my inflammation. I started flushing out. I could feel some of the healing, and I could feel the benefits. I thought, I'll do this another 2 weeks. And by that time, I had stumbled across Dr. Barry, Nisha, Laura Spath, Kelly Hogan, and I heard Nisha say, just keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it, which I'm good at. overcomplicating the simplest things. Dr. Barry suggested to his Monday Night Live, beef, butter, bacon, eggs. Keep it simple, stupid. Kiss. Keep it simple. I did that, and I did that for another 2 months. The other thing that immediately happened besides the inflammation was I stopped thinking about drinking wine every single night. I was drinking a lot of wine, and I'd been using it to cope along with food for years. I stopped thinking about it. I forgot about wine. I'm telling you, that is something. And that happened within the first 4 days of eating just beef and salt and water. I just kept going, and I lost weight. After 2 months, it occurred to me that my heightened anxiety that was max to the max, and almost every single thought I had was an intrusive, illogical thought. What if that tree falls on our house? What if that car, just everything. And I noticed in March of 2023, when we did a road trip, that I was, for the first time, I was an easygoing passenger princess. And let me tell you, that had not been my life for years. My anxiety was so high that it was starting to affect my life, and it was making me even more withdrawn. And that had eased up, and all of the anxious thoughts that I would have, the racing anxious thoughts that I would have at night, had calmed down, and I was sleeping. I was able to fall asleep and stay asleep. So I thought, I'm gonna keep doing this. And so here we are 18 months later, and I'm down 45 pounds. My anxiety and brain fog are incredibly better. I can think again. I didn't even realize how foggy my brain had become. I just have come alive again. I feel young again. I have regulated my hormones, which is really important when you get into your 40s and your late 40s. I sleep great. My skin is the best it's ever been. For the first time, it keeps my anxiety low, my inflammation low, and keeps those in remission, because there's always a chance that I could develop Meniere's in my other ear, my good ear. Now that I know more, I would do things differently. I know better, and so I would do better. I would do a lot of things differently, but now I get a chance to share with other people, like, if this is what you're struggling with, maybe try this. Don't fall into the trap of what we're told about nutrition. So I know what works for me after 18 months of experimenting, learning, trying things, and researching, and I became an expert on me.